15. Okay, hey everybody. Riley Reynolds with Jason Bunderson, and we're here just ahead of the primaries coming up on May 19th to just kind of do another little shout out, kind of remind everybody of why we're doing this, and go into a few things that we think are important. Recently, we've had a couple Facebook posts that would describe us and others like us, and the candidates that we choose as extremists. And I find that a very humorous nickname, because that's one that I probably would have chosen for myself. But anyway, the reality is I want to read something, because I'm just doing a little bit of a scripture study about this. And so I'm going to throw a little church in here for a second, but a little bit of moral values as well. And it says, in every age, the Lord has warned his people about the danger of spiritual complacency, of becoming lukewarm. John records Christ's piercing words to the church in Laodicea, as I know thy works, thou art neither cold nor hot. Because thou art lukewarm, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Nephi also saw the same condition in the last days, describing the people who had become comfortable, passive, and self-satisfied, believing all is well while corruption grows around them. In 2 Nephi 28, 24 through 25, it says, woe be unto him that is at ease in Zion, woe be unto him that crieth all is well. And these warnings are legitimate, and they describe a real world pattern that repeats itself in Scripture and in history when a people become lukewarm. And when they choose comfort over conviction, when they tolerate or even support leaders who do not defend righteousness, the consequences are predictable. In the Book of Mormon, the rise of the kingmen began not with open rebellion, but with ambivalence. Many were willing to support leaders who sought power, prestige, and control rather than liberty. Their justification was simple. It was easier. It required no courage, no sacrifice, no vigilance, and their lukewarmness created the political vacuum that allowed the kingmen to flourish. Later, the Gadian robbers gained influence not because the majority were wicked, but because the majority were indifferent. The record states that the people did support the Gadians, not always out of shared ideology, but out of convenience, apathy, or the belief that corruption was simply the way things were. Their neutrality became complicity, and their complacency became the soil in which secret combinations took root. Today, the same spiritual pattern can manifest itself in our civic lives. When citizens become lukewarm, when they choose leaders who speak conservative words but advance liberal policies, or when they vote out of habit, convenience, or social pressure rather than principle, the result mirrors the Book of Mormon's cycle. A people who are at ease in Zion may unintentionally empower those whose hearts are far from the cause of liberty. And these scriptures warn that lukewarm discipleship leads to lukewarm citizenship, and lukewarm citizenship leads to erosion of freedom. The Lord's pattern is clear. He expects his people to be hot, not half-hearted, to discern, to act, and defend truth with real intent. So, as I get called an extremist, and as we look at what we're going into and trying to fight here, Jason, we have at our county level some of these same problems. And so tell us a little bit about what you found out in your studies.
Okay, so I did some research on Grok, so know it's true, right?
It's true, absolutely.
Anyway, but what I put in the prompt was I wanted to know the voting record as far as the Freedom Index grade for Rick Cheatham, Jim Guthrie, and Dan Gardner, and then also as a whole, basically the whole Idaho Senate and legislature. So this is what it came up with. Rick Cheatham got a 53.7% on 2025 Freedom Index. That is an F. Jim Guthrie scored a 38.8%, which is an F. Okay. Dan Gardner did a little better with 62.2%, which is still a D minus. So then I went to the legislature as a whole. I asked how many people in the Idaho state legislature and also the Senate had uh, what their ratings were. 29 had A's and B's, 36 got F's, and that's out of 105. The rest landed C's or D's. So I don't think you have to be a math genius to figure out off of these percentages that the state of Idaho is being governed by liberal Democrat policies.
Okay. So we got all these liberal Republicans voting with Democrats at our state level, and but we're behaving like that also at our county level. We're doing some things. Our spending, our fiscal responsibility, even at our county level, is terrible. I mean, the things that they've wasted money on this year is, to me, an absolute embarrassment. I mean, the county commissioners were really proud during that meet the candidate night the other night on all the money they've spent on all these new buildings. And I'm just thinking we've got to be a little bit more fiscally responsible as we're going into some really hard economic times, and we're putting the burden of all this stuff on the citizens. But yet the state's doing the same thing. So why does the county think they got to do any different? But this is where our frustration comes. This is why we're extremists. We think there should be some fiscal responsibility, some freedom and liberty expression in their bills, but we're not seeing that.
No, I mean, what we're seeing is people that are operating outside the confines of the Constitution, right? So the first role of government and the biggest role, and some would argue the only role, is to protect the constitutional rights of the citizens. Well, at the county level, we're building all these new buildings, but law enforcement is not being funded,
Yeah.
right? So I know firsthand because I've been donating my products to the new officers, which I'm totally fine with. Um, but they need new vests. Their vests have been um, expired. They need over $12,000 for that. And then there's just another host of things, new communications system and things like that. But then we also have the situation with the EMS. That's been kind of a hot topic for the last couple of years, and rightfully so. This is a county commissioner situation. Not really has anything to do with law enforcement, like somebody tried to make a couple of years ago. But what I have been told from very reputable sources is that we actually need certified paramedics on duty full time in this county now, where just the volunteer EMT program is not cutting it anymore. We are understaffed with nurses at the hospitals, and what they're doing is because they don't have full time paramedics that can administer medications and those sort of things. When they have somebody that needs to be transported, they send a nurse, so which takes more people from the hospital. Uh, I've been told that the emergency room is just absolutely bombarded with people coming in and needing, you know, uh,
Care.
assistant
Yeah.
assistance, immediately. You go to the emergency room, like you're in a bad way. So being understaffed with the nurses, which handle most of that, is unacceptable. So, instead of building buildings for entertainment for the citizens, um, we really should be protecting the citizens, making sure that the law enforcement have the tools and the necessary things so that they can protect the citizens. But then also we need to fund EMS.
So we've got a really nice new rec center. Evidently, I've played pickleball on their little plastic court. You have to play on these mats, and you have to use a pickleball. It sucks. It was so bad. I'll never go back again. And so it was really an embarrassment when they walked in there. See this big beautiful building, but you have to go play on these little mats. You can't walk on the floor. You can't. I mean, it was just it's terrible. And for our the county commissioner, he was so proud of that one. I mean, it's just like, wow, that was his baby child, and
Right.
we got to have some fiscal responsibility. But let's just jump into the state a little bit. You know, the big one is, you guys know from the last two videos, we're pushing James Lamborn against Rick Cheatham, and we're pushing David Worley against Jim Guthrie. And when they've got F's in the Freedom Index and in the financial fiscal responsibility, and yet they call themselves the conservative choice in Idaho, in our area, they are so full of crap. And honestly, people, I don't know if you about you, but I probably got a stack, literally 2 inches tall, of Jim Guthrie's handouts, flyers that have come, two or three in the mail every day. And I'm thinking, how many forests did they kill for this guy to go out and do this? So he's got a big war chest, and he's scared out of his freaking mind about this upcoming primary, and he should, because David Worley is going to be a rock star. If we get him in there, he's going to be a freaking rock star for everybody.
But yeah, David Worley was telling me of the experience he had when he was in Virginia. Because I was asking him about Guthrie wanting to give illegal aliens um, driver's licenses. I said, "Well, do you think that opens up the doors to voter fraud?" And he says, "Yeah, absolutely." He says that's a Democrat play that they've been doing all over the country. We just nobody can deny it anymore. It's everywhere. But anyway, he was saying that they were wanting to make it so that they had a special driver's license, so that they couldn't vote with that driver's license. But he said what happened in Virginia and other places, people at the polls, oh, look the other way, yeah, you go ahead and vote. And so you got people that are willing to cheat at the polls, to win these elections.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Jim Guthrie, his PAC money. He's getting a lot of money from the Farm Bureau. Sadly, what should be a very conservative organization is an extremely liberal organization. The Dairy Association, he's getting a lot of PAC money from the Dairy Association. Again, what should be a very conservative organization has some really liberal tendencies. But he's pandering to a lot of his dairymen, and I got a lot of friends in the dairy industry. But he's pandering to give those illegal immigrants driver's licenses so they can go to work. But I'm thinking to myself, for crying out loud, every citizen has to go through tests. They have to go through all these driver's education. I mean, I've been to Mexico a lot. I've driven in Mexico a lot. And these people, they have to come up here, and they should have to be able to prove that they can drive. They should be a citizen and get their license. But that's not what Guthrie thinks. And so if that makes me an extremist, I'm an extremist. But I don't think it should be allowed. I think that we're having a lot of problems because, I mean, look at all the illegals, not just Mexicans, but your Hindu and your Sikh and your Africans now that are coming over here and getting CDL licenses, and they've never taken a test, and they're killing people all over the highways.
Right.
So I mean, this is legitimately a concern. So what we have here at the county, though, is we have a group of people, and some people would call them the good old boys club,
I'm calling them the gatekeepers.
the gatekeepers, the people that think they're in charge of everything, right? They're usually the people that have a little affluence and a little money, and you know who they are. I know who they are, and they know who they are. More importantly, and they're in county positions of service and in the Republican committee. And not all people on that Republican committee are in the good old boys club. There's people that are trying to make a difference.
Yeah, there's people that are fighting on the inside for some term limits. Basically, when you've got people that are on the Republican committee, they're also on the city council. That's a conflict of interest, right? You've got people on the Republican committee who are what do I want to say? Uh, well, they're in positions of power inside, either the city or the county. Um, they need to work that deal out. This is my thing: is there is nothing going on in that Republican committee that all those seats have to be filled with people who have elected positions in the county or in the city. There's nothing that's that pressing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, to me, it is a power grab.
Yeah.
It is a power grab. And so, anyway, there's people that are, bringing that up. Hopefully there's going to be some changes there because, it's unethical and it's a bad look. Camille Larson, okay, she's on the Weston City Council, okay. She's running against Tyler Olson for precinct committeeman, and she's your county clerk. How ridiculous is that? Is that seat need to be changed because Tyler Olson is doing such a terrible job that she feels like she needs to run? No, she's being influenced, by other people to do that, which is absolutely
Well,
ridiculous.
it's a conflict of interest, if you ask me. If
Exactly.
she's in charge of counting and certifying the vote, and she's running for an elected position and certifying her own votes, to me, it's a conflict of
Two
interest.
elected
Two
positions.
elected positions. You're right. Yeah, that's a good. That's a great point. So I mean, on my sample ballot, I just told people write somebody in. I don't care who it is, just write somebody else in. And we need to send a message to the good old boys club that we're not going to lay down and just let them take over freaking Preston, Idaho, and Franklin County because it's not going to happen. At least we're going to do everything we can to verbally challenge that.
Yep.
So, what else is out there that we need? Oh, the meet the candidate night. There was a little embarrassment there. Um, the ex president probably made sure that the new president was ready to jump on Lamborn if he got a little frosty, and he didn't, but he jumped on him anyway. It was pretty embarrassing. I, I don't even know how to even begin going down that road. But
Well, I mean, these people violated free speech before, and so that's just their mo. They got to gatekeep. They got to keep people from speaking truth. Right? There wasn't anything that James was talking about that wasn't truth. He was just talking about Cheatham's voting record, and you know what? That's public knowledge.
well, he actually said I agreed with Dan on that position, which Dan was sitting right there, and I didn't vote with these guys, and so it was a weird question. It was
Yeah,
kind of a gotcha question, kind of sort of thing. So
yeah.
that was interesting where he kind of stepped into that.
But this is the thing. So I had to do some research because I've seen some other things happen. Um, when you're holding a private event, okay, and you pay the money to rent the building, it is not a building that is funded by taxpayer dollars. Um, I think the Robinson Building actually is, but it was rented for a private event. Well, you can actually make your own rules and that sort of thing, and so free speech is actually out the window,
Yeah.
right? But when they are in a building that has not been rented and they did not pay their money and it is not a private event, well, then free speech is in play. So there's been times where people's free speech has been violated multiple times, not just in this election cycle, but multiple times by these same exact
Yeah.
people. So I don't know whether um, a lawsuit is what is going to be needed to wake these people up, or just maybe enough pressure from other people to it's like, hey, you know what, you need to step aside. Let somebody else take the helm and see what happens. So
Well, at least break up that good old boys club at a minimum. Somehow we got to do that, and make those people accountable. And I mean, most of the people on the committee are friends of ours. We know those people. We like them. But man, there's some people that are really liberal rhinos, and that's exactly what a lot of our people are that are voting for Guthrie and Cheatham. They are rhinos, and they only probably procrastinate that. I think one of them had a Joe Biden sign in his yard at the 2020 election. I mean, he's a Republican committee chairman, but he had Joe Biden. And so I'm just saying, people, that when you start hearing a lot of these influential people making statements about be careful of the extremists, or you know these kinds of things, they're afraid of what God actually wants. And He doesn't want us to be members of the church of the lukewarm. He doesn't expect that. In fact, He hates that. So recognize your responsibility civically and religiously and choose a side, but don't choose a side and use subterfuge to make it your game. And that's what I think irritates more Jason and I more than anything is just all the subterfuge that's going on in this county.
Well, I mean, our founding fathers would roll over in their graves, if they saw how these people are acting and their politics when, they fought a war so that every man could be free, every man could, have freedom of speech, whether they agreed with it or not, freedom of speech was a big thing. And, these guys take it for granted and violate it every chance they get. So,
And I said it on the last video. I've got 26 ancestors that fought in the Revolutionary War. How do I go back to wherever I'm going and meet at least some of them, because I'm pretty sure some of them are going to be where I'm going, and explain that I didn't even fight for the liberty that they fought so hard for. And that's part of the thing that drives me. I've got this drive that just says I want liberty for everybody. I don't have a financial horse in this race. I There's nothing for me to gain by this. I just want everybody to have the liberty and the freedoms that our forefathers fought for. And when you've got liberal Republicans out there tripping us up at every angle, it's never going to be a good result.
right. Well, I was thinking about this yesterday. You and I are willing to die for everybody else's liberty, right? And could you say that about those people who are treading on our liberty? No, they aren't willing to die for anybody's, but they're willing to kill for people's. They're willing to kill for people's bondage.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how these people act. Look at how they treat people. Look at how they vote. Are they voting um, with God, and are they voting with the family? Are they voting for things that promote destroying the nuclear family? The first thing the communists do is destroy the nuclear family. They destroy Christianity, whatever you want to call it. And that's what these people are voting for. When they're voting for men in women's sports and men in girls' bathrooms and men in girls' locker rooms, they're not protecting women. When they're voting for abortion, when they're voting for illegal aliens to have driver's licenses and put our family members at risk of accidents. It's no secret that these things happen a lot. I think there, Brent Sharp, I think he was killed by an illegal alien driving in Cub River.
Hmm.
That's what his boy was telling my son. So I'm guessing that's a pretty good, reliable source. So it has happened in Franklin County, and we have to protect what we have. We cannot allow these people to cheapen it. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and that is final.
Ordained of God. I like what you said. Don't let these politicians cheapen our liberty, cheapen what we're fighting for, cheapen what you should be fighting for, which is your children's future. Because every time it goes down another level, it's the Overton window, and it will never come back, and we'll just descend right into becoming California. So that's a great. I love that statement, Jason. Don't let them cheapen it. So I think let's end there. I
Okay.
think that's a great place to end. People, we got a few days. May 19th, get out and vote. Look ahead if you don't know. Vote. Idaho will tell you where your new assignment is since the precincts are no longer in the churches. Um, find out where you're going to vote and go vote. We've got to send a message, and we need David Worley and James Lamborn in there, and we need Rick Cheatham and Jim Guthrie out. And if every time you see that word conservative, just know that they're lying. And that's all we got. Thanks, Jason.
Yep.